Welcome to this week's edition of Inside the GM Studio, a podcast all about the tabletop RPG hobby. I am your host, Matt.
And as always, I am David.
I have been a happy, busy little gamer this week because I did not run a single game, but I played in two. David and I had our D&D session yesterday, and earlier in the week, I started with a game that I'm going to be playing in that Jeff, my buddy and coworker that also plays in my Wednesday group, he wants to DM for people and try to do a real game. He's ran games for his kids and for family, but he's never had it just like players trying to do like a full campaign. So we're going to try that out. We're going to do Curse of Strahd, and I'm kind of cheating. It's not really cheating. I'm adding on to. I am playing my character from David's game's little brother in this other game.
Well, to be fair, your character was the only character that I think didn't die, right? In our campaign, you could have played like a well, I guess he's going to be at level 1, so it's like, but whatever. That's pretty cool. He's trying to find, I'm drawing a blank on your character's name.
On my old Curse of Strahd character?
Yeah, what was his name?
Damn, I don't even remember.
Fuck.
No, this one I'm playing Rodolfo Decane of the Decane family.
The little brother of your current character, not of your one from Curse of Strahd.
I decided that every time that I make a new D&D character, it's going to be a Decane family member.
Yeah. I knew somebody that used to do that. That was like every character they had was like of the lineage of their first character, and it was just kind of this continuity thing. It was kind of a fun thing they did. I think I picked that up from actually Kurt. Kurt, you don't know this, but like Kurt was the one that taught me to play D&D, and I think that he was the one that was like, oh, yeah, he was like, oh yeah, you like play, the character, like every character is like the same, surname as your previous character. I'm like, that's kind of neat thing, but yeah. Anyway, so how'd that go?
For those listening, when David first started playing, Kurt and whoever else was a part of the group, they wanted to do the very old school way of doing it, where David rolled for everything, even what their characters did. Only the Dungeon Master rolled, which I guess was a very early way that the game was played. It was actually in the rules that the Dungeon Master just rolled the dice for everybody.
Rolled for everybody, yeah. I did that, and then I was like, this is annoying and stupid, and I don't like it.
I don't want to do it. It's going good,
too much work.
I like, other than one other guy that played up, I think he played 3rd edition, but he's played some other role-playing games. I'm the only guy that knows how 5th edition really works out of the 5 of us. The other 2 players are brand spanking new, and then there's Jeff, like I said, who's only ran for his kids, family, and then played in games with me. So I'm there to give him some relief and to have a little bit of fun. And so far, we've been having a blast because, first of all, it's in person. And I don't know, I feel like a rock star because I know this is the first time that I know the rules better than anybody else at the table.
Always nice to have kind of a safety net where it's like a GM there knows more than you, and he's one of your players, but you're still crafting the story. And so it's like you, as a player, feel, okay, like I'm kind of involved and I can kind of help someone with this new thing, but I don't have to assume all of the responsibility. Where does the spanking and brand spanking new come from? Isn't it like a baby thing where you smack the baby on the butt because it's new?
You know what? That's a good question, and that's the only explanation I could think of. And yeah,
it's the only one I can think of either.
Brand new baby, spank that baby.
Well, by the way, this brand new, where does that come from? I learned this not that long ago. It's what you call a dead idiom. it's part of the reason you should try to avoid using it because the reason they used to call things brand new is a long time ago, a brand, like you brand a horse with, like fresh out of the fire, people would think of that. They would think of like, oh, a brand. And so it was like it emphasized just how new it was. But
Oh,
that association is probably long gone. And when you say brand new, that image no longer comes to mind because why the fuck would it? Because we don't live in a cottage industry
yeah.
society where there are like blacksmiths on every corner or whatever. So it's what you call a dead idiom, and one that when I write in particular, and to a lesser degree when I speak, I try to cut out of my verbiage because it just doesn't really add anything. If you say it's a brand, I got a brand new car. It's like, I'm sorry, did you get a new car? Or did you not get a new car? They're like, well, it's new, new to me. It's like, so is it new or not?
Yeah.
Like it's new, right?
Mm.
It's got miles on it, but you got a different car than the one you had. It's like, yeah, yeah. It's like, okay, well, now I understand.
Yeah, there was a oh damn, there was something else I was trying to think of now. Well, I'm never gonna think of it now because I got something else on the mind. Is I love helping out new players by not even realizing I'm doing it.
Hmm.
So when we were playing, when David and I play, and in pretty much any game that I play in, we give ourselves a little bit of, you know, links to bending the story to around us. Um, Again, David has a word.
Latitude.
Yeah, David has another word for it that I can never remember. But uh, what was I doing? I think I was just like, oh yes, I reach down and I find a decent sized stone that looks like this to use to like throw at a window or something like that. And the other people there that were told what D&D is, they were just like, can you do that? Can he do that? Isn't he supposed to ask if there are stones around? And I was just like, actually, this comes up quite a bit. They either new players go too far or they don't go enough to give
Yeah.
themselves, the latitude to go out and say that this small thing, like I reach into my pocket and pull out a comb, that's not going to
Yeah.
do anything to the story. Who gives a
Yeah,
fuck?
this is there should be some bandwidth for players to do that because if it doesn't dramatically affect the story. Now, look, one of the first players I ever had, he thought D&D was this. Oh, I see a horse walk up and I go over and I get on it.
Yeah.
And it's got a bag of gold in the saddlebag, and so I count the gold. It's like, no, 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 no.
Mm-hmm.
Like, none of that happens, right? Well, what do you mean? I thought you said I could do what I say what I do. It's like, yeah, yeah, but you don't get to decide that there's just like a horse there with a bunch of gold on it.
Yep.
Like,
That's the other side.
yeah, but something like I pick up a stone, like I pull a comb out of my pocket, I have a piece of chalk in my belt pouch. Like, do these things really break the game? No, they encourage player creativity
Mm.
to do things that might not otherwise be, because a DM shouldn't be detailing every single stone in a fucking room or every single bit of texture building a diorama. This just came up at my writing club where I was talking with a guy that's in my writing club, and he's like one of those sci-fi guys, and he's like he has like that hard sci-fi blinders on, and I'm reading something he's written. I'm like, dude, you don't need to build a diorama in the reader's head of like what is in every corner of this room. You're gonna lose them, right?
Mm.
Get to something that's important, and when give them a basic overview of what the room looks like, and then don't have it come out of left field that like maybe two characters are within proximity to each other or one can hear the other one. It's like, wait, well, he was by him? I didn't know that. They shouldn't feel that way, but they don't need to know every stitch of furniture in the fucking room, right? Hit the high points, and then when it's relevant, contextualize it for the reader. And what the PCs are doing is the second part. When it's relevant, contextualize it. And that's fine as long as it allows for role playing opportunities and not for game breaking
Yeah.
like narrative stuff.
Yeah. There's a pit in front of you. Oh, I just happen to have a bit of rope in my bag that isn't
Hmm.
on my equipment list or anything like that. That might be a little too far. Or like you said, I go and I find a horse to jump on just out in the middle of nowhere. Too much.
To me, the rope thing is even in the middle. The like it's okay. You have a coil of rope. You're an adventurer. Why would you? It wouldn't be out of bounds for you to have a coil of rope. I tried to
Mm.
institute this with the Sundry rule, where it was like
Yep.
generally players kind of have the things that they know they might need,
Hmm.
um, and Apparently,
Yeah.
players don't like that. They like to have an inventory of every single thing they have, but
Hmm.
that just
I tried
excludes
this.
the things that they.
I tried to implement this when when Vampire the Masquerade Fifth Edition was first coming out. I wanted to try the playtest, and I brought in David, Patrick. Damn it, who else was it? Little Nate, and I think there was one other person that we got to play test it. We were playing online, and I remember I can't remember if it was Jason or someone else that we knew at
Mhm.
the time that played Vampire.
I think it was
Uh,
Wyatt. Wasn't it
oh
Wyatt?
yes, it was Wyatt. Yes,
Yeah.
because we were in the midst of playing with Wyatt with our Call of Cthulhu game.
Hmm.
But I remember at one point, Patrick, who we still play with in our D&D game, we talk about him quite a bit. He was playing the Nosferatu, who is like he's all about the cats. He likes having the
Yeah.
cats around, and he wanted somehow to call the cats in. I was like, "Oh, you probably got a tin of tuna in your pocket," and he's just like, "Oh, well, it's not on my sheet or anything." And I
Hmm.
was just like, "It's fine, dude. You know, just you can have a. You're a fucking cat lady, pretty much. You can have a tin of tuna in your pocket." And he's just like, "Oh, can I really? That's kind of weird." And but that's the way Patrick thinks. He likes things on paper and data to look at.
He's a
And
programmer.
that's
That makes
yeah,
sense.
and that's where David came up with it. Where he was just like, "No, it's this is nothing that's really going to break the game. It's okay if you want to just pull something out like a tin of tuna."
Well, it's the cool things about stuff like that is if you give a player a little thing like that. Oh, okay, you have a tin of tuna or a rock or a piece of chalk. Either it's just some fun role-playing texture, or you can see how the player builds on it to leverage it in a way that's meaningful. And that empowers the players to do cool things where it's like this little thing kind of maybe leads to maybe you lure the cat over. And so, so you lure the cat over because you had a tin of tuna. And maybe now you do a check on the cat to try to,
Hmm.
uh, I don't know, charm it or something. And then it does. And then it kind of goes into the next room and scouts ahead for you and reports back because you can talk to animals. And now you have some intel and you use that intel to better strategize an upcoming combat encounter. And because you did, that combat encounter goes fairly well. It's like, well, that's a pretty good success that you used a little bit of your wit and cunning from just a very small give on the DM's part that didn't break the story, but you did leverage it into a way that was interesting. And even if not most of them, or I should say, even if the majority of them don't go that way, what's the harm? Then you're going, oh, okay, well, you can just add a little bit of texture to the game, especially if it's interesting character stuff. I sit down and I pull a pipe out of the
Hmm.
pocket that I have and kind of like light it up, and I'm thinking, and like you don't have a pipe, you don't have a pipe.
Yeah.
Your characters can't like smoke a pipe and think about that because like that's just not a thing that's in your inventory. It's like, geez, talk about really stifling your players' creativity there. It's
I
like,
had one
why?
at a convention that I was running a Call of Cthulhu game, and one of the players, this dude he was obviously a theater kid in high school, because he got
You were a
really into.
theater kid in high
I know,
school.
but and the thing that's how we can smell our own.
Hmm.
He gets really into character, like he gets in the southern drawl accent and all this other stuff, and he just leans back in the chair like it's a rocking chair, and he talks about how they're all in an office at the moment, but he sits in a chair and pulls out a bit of wood and a whittling knife out of his pocket. And some of the other folks were just like, "You carry a bit of wood in your pocket?" And he's just like, "You never met a whittler, have you?"
You never met a whittler, have you? It's yeah, because look, I might veto some stuff like that if it seems totally out of character, like if you're playing some debonair bard or whatever, and then I'm supposed to believe that you have some item in your inventory that's just way out the scope of you're like, oh yeah, I have a sledgehammer in my backpack. It's like, no,
Hmm.
you don't, right? You're like a gentleman, right? If you said I had a spool of thread or a length of silk or something, I might have let it slide. But you don't have a sledgehammer, right? No, you
Yeah.
don't. But the thing is that what's self-correcting about that is that power gamers hardly ever think like that. it's almost always players that are a little more like mushy and creative that think that way. The next level power gamers that think that way are the ones that realize that their GM might allow it and then they leverage it in some way to get the shit that they need. You do have to be on guard for that, but I've not had much issue with it, even with the kind of more power gaming players that I've had. So, did you want to talk about the game last night?
Oh, sure.
Or do you have more to say about the Curse of Strahd campaign? I'm curious how that went.
No, because we just started and got to know each other a little bit. We only played for a few hours.
Mhm.
We did a practice encounter as well as a practice skill challenge esque sort of thing for the guys that have never done it.
Okay.
And then we kind of got into just introductions and getting into the campaign itself. So nothing like big has happened yet,
Nice.
which I'm sure I'm going to talk about much later once we actually get a schedule of when we're going to play and all that.
Anytime you can kick the can of dread down the road in Curse of Strahd, it's like, well, we didn't do anything. It's like, well, that's fine. Count
Yeah.
your like
Hmm.
get your bearings because that campaign is fucking brutal.
Our game yesterday, uh, luckily I was only slightly buzzed from coming from a tour at a distillery, getting to test a bunch of whiskeys that were fucking fantastic. Thank you. I was so
I
pissed
like that.
because,
I like that you use test and not taste, like as
yeah,
if you're.
no, it was testing because I had
How
never
well
had
do
them
they
before.
work?
Yes, I wanted to see the effectiveness of them.
Yes.
Um, but I was kind of pissed because they don't have the store open yet there. They have the tasting room, but you can't buy anything at their new location. So I wasn't able to bring any bottles home, which really kind of pissed me off.
Boo.
But yesterday we had some really good role playing, I thought, which again, more free form between David and I about kind of what my family home was like and how I and my siblings interacted.
Hmm.
Uh, David got to kind of surprise me and keep me entertained with bringing in some of my siblings and how they would act and how they felt towards me, as well as I got to continue to with the rest of the players and the rest of the group, around the table. Got to learn about what my family is really like, and as much as I talked about it, now they get to see it firsthand, and it makes it feel real. That was what I
Yeah.
really liked. You fucking killed it with the description of the manor and all that. I was like,
Yeah.
that's exactly how I fucking thought of it. Everybody was
It
on
was.
point with like the original thought of everything that I had in my head. Even Cody, when he talked about the uniform that he put on, the
Yeah.
seed uniform from Final Fantasy VIII was the exact idea I had with what everybody
It went right
wore
over
in
my
that
fucking
area.
head. I gotta tell you, I was like, okay, they know what they're talking about. I guess
Oh
that's.
yeah,
I'm just
dude.
gonna let that image be in their head.
Yep. But yeah, when you described the manor and how everybody was dressed there, I was just like, that's exactly what I had in my head when I first thought of this.
Well, I think that's the benefit of we've had a bit of runway, and you've communicated some things about your family's pathology. And so I just kind of extrapolated from there, feeling like, look, if you cared what the relevant details were, you would have filled them in because
Hmm.
your background is fairly detailed. This is the benefit of a session zero when asking your players to do a lengthy background fill in is that you can assume that if players wrote 2 pages on their background and they excluded something, that they're comfortable with you filling in the gaps there. So there was a good mix. We left on a cliffhanger previously where there was a combat encounter, so we started with a combat encounter. That was cool. Got a little bit of exploration where I was like, gave the party a little bit of opportunity to do some downtime. So there was that. Then we came into some exposition and description, and then got into a couple of micro role-playing encounters, and then other ones where I kind of pulled out the scope and just kind of paraphrased what happened uh, for the party because the rest of the group, it was mostly centric on your character and wanted to
Hmm.
have a couple of role-playing encounters with your mentor, with your older brother, and at the dinner. And I focused in on a role-playing encounter with Cody's character and Patrick's character and your
Hmm.
sister to get to know her, to characterize her, not just for them, but for you as well, to kind of
Yeah.
frame what sort of character she is. And that kind of pushed a little bit of the plot forward because those two characters were like, look, we have here, we're at this noble library. Maybe we can kind of get some information about the plot that we might be relevant. So that was kind of a way to move the plot forward a little bit for them. And then we end capped with kind of a nice dinner scene and a real soft cliffhanger about
Hmm.
you sending the party off on this other quest to do this thing, which is fine. I'm fine with a soft cliffhanger
Yeah,
every
it
now
was
and
soft, but it
again.
was still
Yeah.
intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, you can't have everything be jacked up to fucking do levels every time,
Yeah.
right? You want a soft cliffhanger when there's a low energy session, which that was. It was a little shortened. Um, and there's some intrigue with Beto's character, which maybe you had picked up on, kind of dovetails with he might need to kind of take a couple, like a month or two off from the game.
Mm.
So we might be able just to pluck him down in his home, and then I can come back with a high overview of what happened while he was there. Um, and he can rejoin the party and the adventure probably before the party hits level 8. Um, but it seemed organic, and it made me feel good because he was like, "Oh, it was pretty clear that you like put that in there so that like you would give me a like an escape hatch to like, in case I needed a dip from the game." And I'm like, "No, that was actually always the plan. I was actually planning on playing through the whole situation at Goldhaven with your romantic interest and your clan and everything. But if you're just going to be gone, then we can just kind of fade to black on that, and the party can pick you up at a later date. You can rejoin and kind of be like, "Wow, it was crazy what happened at Goldhaven. Anyway, what's going on with the party?" Or whatever. Um, he was like, "Oh, it seemed like you put that in there explicitly so that I would have an out." And I was like, "Nope, already planned it out." But it is a good organic place to pluck him out of the plot if
Mm.
needed. I told him, I'm like, "Look, this is probably not going to be a super challenging adventure in the CR rating of monsters and traps and everything. It's going to be more role playing heavy, but what I want to do with this chapter is that I feel like I've set the stage for the stakes of what's going on. And I've hopefully, made the party aware of how dire the situation is with the prophecy and the nodes and the red woman and all that. But a lot of it is fairly enigmatic, and a lot of it is kind of detached from your backstories. This adventure is designed to try to, one, give you some clarity as to what is happening because there's not some ticking clock that you need to deal with putting out fires left and right. So you can have a little bit of time to investigate, to learn a little bit more, to kind of get a sense of what it is that is going on and get more on a level footing. There are a few factions that are in play. Your family, which you already alluded to, has ties to the Zentarum.
Mm.
Patrick's character has ties to the Harpers. Beto's character has like, a clan that he's tied to that are important in the region, and then this rival clan that he has like a romantic interest with. And then Krapos's character kind of sits on the outside of that, which is perfectly fine.
Mm.
And Cody's character has these higher level things that I want to try to ground all of them in the relevance of the adventure, give you a little bit of more information, and allow your characters to have some personal investment in the overall narrative of the plot rather than running around feeling like you're just constantly putting out fires like chickens with your heads cut off. So if I can achieve that, this adventure should be fairly low energy compared to the last one. But you likely will hit level 7. I would like Beto to be back somewhere between the time you hit level 7, but before you hit level 8,
Mm.
because that is a little bit too much of time to be foregone. And it's tracking that that's going to go that way, and I'm fairly happy with the pacing. Short session last night, but it it felt like there was some significant gains, like role playing wise, and we'll get into some more plot driven stuff in the upcoming sessions. So
Hell yeah. Oh god, I just looked over at the other screen of our live stream and I
mm.
turned my head, and with my headphones it's accentuating my bald spot, and I'm okay,
Did
there we
someone
go.
point that out in the live stream?
No, I just saw it myself as I turned my
Ugh,
head. I was like, oh, okay, gotta fix that real quick. Okay.
that shit is gross.
All right. Should we get to an email from a listener?
Yeah, let's do that. Why not?
So this one comes from David in Miami.
What's up, David? Good name, bro.
David writes, "Sup, fuckers."
Sup,
Good.
dude?
I just recently started the podcast not too long ago, and I've been getting into the backlog of episodes.
Sure.
I've noticed that you guys like to talk about horror games quite a bit, as well as horror stories from the table. So I got both for you, a question about horror stories and a horror story myself that did not exactly happen to me, but it is one of my favorites that I've ever read. And then he sent me a link to the story. So we'll go into the horror story here. This story happened a couple of years ago. Basically, it was me and I think 3 or 4 other friends. Typically, I would DM, and after my campaign fizzled out for whatever reason, one of my players wanted to try DMing. I helped him set up the campaign. The time comes for him to start DMing the campaign I helped him build. I think we started at level 1 or 2. I was playing a tiefling bard. The other players, I think, were a druid or a barbarian and an artificer. After a couple of sessions, it was going pretty smooth. We were having a good time. At one point, I had to miss a session, but was cool with them continuing without me. The next session, I was there and I joined back with the party before we went into a dungeon. We went into the dungeon and we were going through it like normal, just some puzzles, but before our first combat, the DM decided to tell me that since I was rusty after missing a session, I had disadvantage on every roll in combat. That annoyed me, but I just went with it. I had taken some damage, but figured I'd be fine because I usually play backline support. Eventually, we approached a big door, and I decided to enter the room and suddenly get attacked by a big bird, and it takes me down to 1 hit point. The rest of the party makes their way in to try to help me, but the DM decides that despite my teammates wanting to protect me and attacking the bird, the DM decides that the bird continues to attack me, obviously downing me. I'm a little baffled at that decision, but it's whatever. So I just start rolling my saving throws on my turns. But the DM says the bird continues to attack me because it hates you. So it hits me again, and I don't know if
it hates you or the DM hates you.
yeah. Oh, this is because it's in quotes. It hates you, quote from the DM. So it hits me again, and I don't know if this is a real rule, but he said that it's an automatic 2 failed death saves. Yes, it's a real rule.
No, no, it's one failed death save.
If you get hit, I thought it was
If you
automatic
get hit,
2.
it's a
If it's critical, if it's a critical, then it's 2.
I don't think so. I think the rules just say, because frankly, if you're incapacitated, then any hit against you would be a critical hit.
True.
And so it's just if you take damage when you're already dying, it's a death saving throw. It's a failed death saving throw. I think that's the generic rule.
Inside the GM studio at gmail.com. Are we right? This is the first time we want to know. Let you tell us. Are we correct?
I'm correct.
I had succeeded my first death save, and I succeeded the next one after the attack. So I was hoping to hold out for one more round to survive. But for some reason, this bird takes a legendary action, despite this not even being a boss, not meaning to be a tough encounter, just a creature in a dungeon, and it kills me. For this, I would hope, understandably, pisses me off, because there is no reason the DM should fish for a kill like that. I was just stuck spectating afterwards and sat there for upwards of an hour. After that session, I was barely invested in my character or the story because the DM set the precedent he could just kill me out of the blue and remove my story from the rest of the campaign. I think the campaign ended fine, but I had 0 agency for the rest of the campaign.
Wow.
Yeah, okay. Right?
So is that just the first one, or is there more?
That was one that he sent, and now he has a question about horror games.
Okay. Well, some thoughts on that initial scenario. One, it seems like he tried to take it in stride. This is somebody you tried to help be a GM, right? And then you missed one session, and it sounds like he was pissed that you missed a session and was just like, well, I need to punish this player at every opportunity. To the point where it almost breaks the world, where it's like there's 3 other allies that are like in between it, and it's like he provokes 4 opportunity attacks to come over, but you're unconscious, you're no threat to it, and he just comes over and attacks you anyway because he hates you. It's like, but why? That doesn't make any sense. So his frustration is not misplaced. That's to be clear. Yeah, if the GM wants to kill anyone, you can. You just can. You could just
Mm-hmm.
decide that you're gonna kill a player. And but if you decide you're gonna kill a player, that is you deciding instead of looking at the available scenario and going what follows logically, what makes the most sense for the characters in this scenario. Now, look, I'm not saying that there's not some monsters or some scenarios where they might go, it makes perfect sense to push past all of the frontline attackers and go fucking gang bang the spellcaster in the back if he's laying fucking fireballs and lightning bolts all over everybody and they're fairly smart characters. This is based on the general intelligence, wisdom, and overall tactics of the monster. Like,
Mm-hmm.
for instance, in our campaign last night, I went through this. I was like, okay, the party was facing off a bunch of Sahugan minions, and then a Sahugan, I believe he's called a Blade Master. He's like a big hulking tank, and then there's a Sahugan High Priestess. And the Sahugan's High Priestess has a pretty decent wisdom. She uses wisdom as her spellcasting modifier. And what that means is that she's fairly insightful. And so the I'm like, okay, I'm trying to think through. The priestess has one fourth level spell slot, and the spell that she has to available at her disposal is banishment. So, given that the priestess has fairly good insight, and the saving throw against that spell is a charisma saving throw, she's likely insightful enough to be able to target the character that she believes has the lowest charisma and target that character for banishment because it has the greatest degree of success of plucking a party member out of the fight. However, Matt and his infinite cleverness is like, I'm going to move around this corner and hide so I'm out of her line of sight because
Mm-hmm.
I have the lowest charisma. I don't think he knew that that's what she was going to do. Ended up targeting a different party member. Those sort of things make sense. They don't make sense for something like a zombie or something that's got animal intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
which is more likely to act on instinct. And if you find yourself having some sort of desire to coalesce around a certain player to punish them or kill them, I would challenge you to think long and hard about how much of that is your sensibility about a DM and how much of it follows logically, because rationale should govern the way any combat encounter plays out. So,
Yeah. Plus, I want to know what fucking bird creature at level 1 or 2 in that is just dungeon trash has legendary actions.
exactly. And it seems like that's just designed, might even have been put in on the fly to just kind of fuck the player, that
Yeah.
one particular player up. It seems punitive, but you got to cut the new DM a little bit of slack because they might not understand the whole nature of being a DM, and he probably erred on the side of not wanting to be seen as soft or a noob or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and he's taking that kind of adversarial tact where it's like players versus GM, and that takes a little while to iron out. The best thing you can probably do is just ignore it and maybe offer some friendly advice moving forward in the future. Try not to make it out like you're pissed as to what happened to you, because that'll just seem like you are being a crybaby. But anyway, on
I
to the
want
next
to. Some
scenarios.
of these comments here are really good here. Uh, Someone said underneath there, "What did you do? Sleep with his wife or something?" And then somebody added on to that, "Slept with a bird's wife." Am I right? Good one. Good one, dude.
Oh, because where did he uppost it?
On Reddit.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I saw this other one here. I got a holy shit. This is great. So this is another horror story that I just saw on the side that kind of threw me for a loop. Don't worry, David. I'm going to get back to your email here in just a second. This was a Craigslist ad with a title "Beautiful Priestess Needed for D&D." Already fucking fantastic choice. Hi, my group of friends, around 30-year-old men, have a multi-year Dungeons and Dragons adventure going. This Sunday, there's a small scene where we encounter a beautiful naked priestess, and I thought it would be fun to have an actor play the part. I would require you to be topless on our virtual Zoom, so obviously you'd have to be comfortable with that. Our session starts at 4 p.m. this Sunday. The one trick is I don't exactly know when we will encounter the priestess, but it will be at some point between 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Ideally, you could be available in the time frame, and then I can text you the precise time to join the Zoom link. The actual scene won't be more than 5 minutes, so it won't be much time acting. I'll provide some guidance on the part beforehand. Feel free to reply with any questions. Also, if you could include a picture with your reply, that would be helpful. Thanks. Dude.
Feel free to inquire with any questions. Yeah, are you on the FBI's most wanted list? Because that is some. This is we have a sexy, whatever
Yeah.
group of 30-year-old like D&D nerd. It's like, yeah, there's a name for those guys. They're called incels.
Yeah.
We have a name for them. It's like, dude, fucking cut that out forever. Fucking cut that out.
Yeah,
Whatever
come
it is
on,
you're
dude.
doing, stop it. Full stop. No other commentary. Just stop.
It would
Stop being the
require you to
person
be
that you're being.
topless on our Zoom call. Wow.
Yeah. And it's like, and to be fair, it's not even like it doesn't sound like he's even offering like any money or anything. I mean, get some
Mm.
chick on OnlyFans would probably be willing to do it.
Oh,
It's like,
fuck
no,
yeah.
no, just you know, just don't you want to like acting opportunity? It's like, yeah, I'm gonna put this on my resume and let a bunch of fucking horny 30-year-old incels like ogle me on the fucking internet um for role playing purposes. It's like, dude, I'm sorry. Is this a role playing session or is it some sort of weird Japanese anime
Mm.
fucking hentai shit? Like, stop it. Don't do that. Don't do that ever.
Sorry, I had to add that one in there. That one kind of took me by surprise. All right, back to David's email. All right, on to my question. So I want to do a horror game, just like you guys were talking about before, but I don't play Call of Cthulhu and I play Savage Worlds at the moment. And I want to do a horror game, but I don't want to do a murder mystery like those other games do. I want to do
Okay.
something like that really scared me when I was a kid, but I had a ton of fun with it. Yes, I'm talking about Predator. I loved Predator when I was a kid, but it scared the shit out of me. I want that. I want the action. I want the dumb muscle heads to go around and fight aliens, and I want to make the players scared. How do I do this? How do I keep the action up but continue to make the whole game feel like a horror game?
Well, first of all, you're right. Predator's awesome. It's like just one of the fucking most
Yeah,
awesome movies
no
ever
argument
made.
there.
Um, and
I'm
if
gonna
it's
let you lead
creepy,
this one because I this one kind of threw me off. I don't know because there's Pulp Cthulhu now, which is supposed to be that. It's supposed to be a lot more actiony than horror. But I want to know what you think, David, because you're more of the writer than I am when it comes to something like this.
it's okay. So the the tension in Predator, if I wanted to tease apart, like if he's using that as a rubric for what he wants to kind of do, the tension in Predator comes from the illusion, and by which I mean Allusion, illusion, not like illusionist illusion.
Mm-hmm.
It is alluding to a formidable enemy that is hard to get your head around, right? They can't really see the enemy, but there is a sense that the enemy is incredibly formidable
Mm.
and possibly an aggressor at them. And given that there's a whole team of guys that are very capable, you're left with this idea, this sense of dread, as it were, that like whatever is comfortable hunting these like alpha male fucking highly competent humans, like in a 1 to 8 scenario, 10, 8 of them I think, um must be incredibly competent and must be doing it for kind of especially because you get the sense that it is just doing it for sport. So that it's not hunting them because it needs to eat. It's not hunting them because it's cornered. It's hunting them just for funsies. And so what that does subtextually, whether you realize it or not, is it communicates that this thing that the characters are up against is incredibly formidable. Further, the thing that is incredibly formidable is in its element, right? It has areas where it can hide, it has a cloaking device, and so it can use stealth, it can use whatever tactics that exploit the party's weakness. So try to replicate that to the best of your ability. Think of your player characters as the Ponch and Dutch and Dylan and Mac and Blaine and Billy and who's the other guy? I'm forgetting the other guy's name. Um, that's most of them. Try to think of them like that. They're highly competent characters, and what it does is it foreshadows well how competent the monster is. So you need to build a sense of dread. So the characters in Predator come across Green Berets,
Mm.
supposedly an elite unit, and they've been skinned and hung almost just like they're cattle. So what that does is it communicates how fearsome the opponent is. Um, if he's a new listener, I would say go back and listen to our episode. As bad as the audio is, go back and listen to our episode on creating a formidable villain. It's one of our first 15 or so
Mm.
episodes, but I thought that I kind of encapsulated, we both encapsulated pretty well how you make a formidable villain. Predator is a masterclass in that because it not only sets up the villain to be incredibly dreadful, but also delivers on how dreadful it is once it kind of distills down to the final confrontation. That might be difficult to do in a party-based adventure game because the party-based adventure game is not presuming that each of the characters kind of dies off in quick succession.
Mm.
So, but that tension is what makes the suspense of the film taut. I don't know that it makes it a horror movie because it doesn't really touch on any psychological, emotional,
Mm.
existential themes. But it is a battle for survival. And so the more you can embed any concepts in your game that set the stakes well, we did an episode on that too. You might want to go back and listen to our setting the stakes episode. If you set the stakes well and you establish the villain as formidable, and then you try to have like a slow seep of like breadcrumbs that the players simultaneously gain an understanding of what they're up against, but also with that understanding, gain some knowledge as to how to combat it, even if they might be at a disadvantage. That's where the tension from Predator lies, is that
Mm.
these characters are not used to being in a position where they're not in control because they are so powerful, they are so capable, they are so knowledgeable, and they have so much expertise. But now they are in a position where they don't have that. They are vulnerable because they cannot extricate themselves from this segment of the jungle, and they have something that's hunting them that has a variety of advantages over them. Try to think through how you can codify those advantages in the villain, how you can forecast them to the party in a way that doesn't seem super shoehorned, feels organic, where they're revealing the plot. Give the player a hint of some sense of weakness if they play their cards right, that would allow them for a chance of victory, and then have there be some sort of inciting incident that has like a culmination of a variety of these elements where they come to a head, things kind of get out in the open, and the players can confront the problem head on. And then if you've done all of your legwork, then and you're prepared to allow the chips to fall where they may. Don't create a villain that is super. I'm encapsulating our villain episode a little bit. but don't create a villain that seems super formidable that only pulls punches once the stakes are at their highest.
Mm-hmm.
That will neuter and rob the narrative of any dramatic tension. So you
Mm.
want to be prepared to follow through, but don't overcommit. Don't make it out like this villain is invincible or it could paralyze the players from doing anything. So you want to give them some glimmers of hope. In Predator, this is encapsulated by the first time it's encapsulated is when Arnold says, "If it bleeds, we can kill it."
Mm.
So it's like they gun it down and they don't kill it. They empty thousands of rounds of ammunition into the empty jungle, and they don't kill the monster, and that seems disheartening. But then there's a glimmer of hope where Arnold says, like, "This is blood. If it bleeds, we can kill it, right? Like we can figure out a way to do it." And so that keeps them kind of going on. You want to try to have a trail of breadcrumbs like that that allows the players to maintain hope and maintain a posture of being something that's formidable in their own right, even if they're at somewhat of a disadvantage. And ideally, the best way to go about it, this is really not in Predator, but the best way to go about it is to try to figure out ways that the players need to cooperate to take down a formidable enemy, where they need to leverage each of their skills in some way that allows them to be successful against an enemy that might otherwise eviscerate any of them individually. So I've spoken for long enough. I'll let Matt weigh in now at this point.
Well, now that storytelling has gone in, I want to kind of move in with a little bit of mechanics that you can use.
Hmm.
You said you're using Savage Worlds. I'm hoping that you're using Adventure Edition, because if you're not, you're wrong. Go to Adventure
You,
Edition.
you're just wrong. Full
Yeah, you're
stop.
wrong. Adventure Edition has great rules um, for madness and fear, which is used in for games like Call of Cthulhu, other horror games. They usually go for a fear mechanic or a madness mechanic for the players to play with. The madness mechanic is very cool. The fear mechanic, I think, is in Deadlands. I don't know if it's in the core book, so I could be wrong on that. But I know that the madness mechanic is in the Adventure Edition book. Work with those, because even in Predator, Jesse Ventura's character kind of goes mad at one point, but I think he's just supposed to be a crazy minigun lugging brute anyway throughout the movie. But others, they kind of go, when you're dealing with an opponent that you're not supposed to, kind of, your brain doesn't function when you're thinking about this sort of thing. We can't see this thing. It has technology that we've never even thought of. Its blood glows green. It makes your brain kind of skip a beat. So remember this in storytelling, and you can bring it into mechanics as well. When things like this out of our reality happen, our brains break. It tries to make sense of something, and sometimes it has to reboot itself or try to rewrite itself in order to make sense of it. And then we can bring that into the mechanics itself for the characters to play around with, and it makes that fun. It gives us a little something to play in the game as well as the storytelling. Um,
Yeah, I would, I mean, that I think that's who I forgot. I forgot Blaine. Blaine is Jesse Ventura's character.
mm.
But if anyone loses their mind, I would say it's Mac after Blaine
Mac is
dies.
definitely the one that, yeah,
Mac like
Mac and
comes off the
Billy.
rails.
Billy has a really hard time because Billy's the native guy, right? That
Yeah,
has the knife that he's really big fan of.
yeah, yeah.
He kind of goes off the rails for a while.
Well, he comes off the rails at the end once he decides that he's kind of gone off the deep end. But I would say better than Predator as far as like a horror movie that builds tension and establishes some of these elements that you're talking about. Ridley Scott's Alien is probably
That,
it
yeah.
precedes this movie precedes Predator by about 10 years.
Or when I was thinking, when I was reading David's email, is I was thinking either Alien 3, because that was a little bit more of an action film,
Hmm.
and even Aliens, which I still count as a horror film. It's more of a thriller than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I think Aliens is more of an action movie, but it definitely has horror elements. But the first one is absolutely full stop, just a
Oh
horror
yeah,
movie.
that is a
Um,
it's a horror
so
movie.
if you're trying to incorporate horror elements, what you need to what you need to because it's easy enough to incorporate whole horror elements and then establish moments at which you can punch up the action. So, but if you're incorporating horror elements, what you need to give the players is a sense of dread, that what they're up against is unknown to them. That it's, and this is true in Predator as well as Alien. I mean, they're both dealing with aliens. They're foreign things, and they don't know what it is. And that the dread and the horror exists in those gaps where the characters in the narrative, well, because this is something otherworldly, they have no idea kind of what they're up against. And so that doesn't give them confidence because it could be something completely outside the scope of human understanding. That's where the dread lies, and you
Mm,
need to leverage that to the best of your ability with atmosphere, with description, with foreshadowing,
mm,
so that when punctuated moments of action do happen, they seem intense because they're raising the stakes. And you don't need to always make them fruitful. Like I said, I point to the example in Predator where it's like they're shooting at the fucking jungle, but it's like nothing really comes of that. It feels like a catharsis. And actually, when it's done, there's a moment where there is a hopelessness because they just gun down all this jungle. And normally, when you shoot at something for 1,000 rounds of ammunition or whatever it is that they gun down people with, you're gonna get some result just by sheer happenstance. And then they don't, and there's this kind of brief plunge of despair, and then again a brief recovery when Arnold, showing some leadership qualities in the context of the film, says like, it's not hopeless. Like we wounded this creature, and so it's if we wounded it, then we can kind of leverage
mm.
that. And so you want there to be dollops of light and hope for the
Yep.
players to kind of carry forward, but generally speaking, they should be just that pinpricks of lights and otherwise dark and dismal sense of dread and hopelessness. That the only thing that will save them is their grit, their capabilities, their wits, and that's how Predator plays out because the other characters either resign themselves. Billy resigns himself to kind of just being taken because he's just crushed by the overwhelming formidability of the monster, or other characters kind of get caught up in their own hubris. Blaine is a good example. He dies because of just plain hubris. Some of them are just happenstance. But Dutch survives because he embraces the challenge. He embraces that this is like a battle of wits, it's a battle of grit, and I'm going to play on that field to the best of my ability and try to do it better than my enemy now that I understand my enemy a little bit
Mm.
better. And he does get some luck along the way, discovering that the mud kind of mutes his heat signature. But small things like that are not totally world breaking. They're not really a deus ex machina because if you recall, within the context of the film, the way he discovers that is through a series of actually very deliberate actions where he's being clever and he's like throwing down the gauntlet, and he's not hiding. He's like embracing and like confronting the adversary in front of him, and then he gets a lucky break with the mud on him or whatever. Generally speaking, players, audiences, readers, whatever, don't mind a little bit of that if it feels like a fortuitous bounce in their direction simply because they're doing the right things in the world. So try to think of ways you can engineer that from a mechanics standpoint, and I think you're well positioned for success to replicate the mood of that film in a horror kind of actiony genre sort of way.
Oh yeah, never thought of it that way. Yeah, I have played Pulp Cthulhu in the past, but it was just more that it was more pulpy than horror. I never thought about bringing
Mm.
horror into action. until David came and he was just like, when I was a kid, Predators scared the shit out of me. It was a horror movie to me, but it was an action film. So yeah, that's a great idea. All right. Well, I think that's going to bring us to the end of this episode. All of you out there, send us some shit like David did. This was great. I thought this was a fantastic question, as well as the horror story. Keep sending those in. I love horror stories like that. But please send us some questions. Just let us know how we've been doing inside the GM studio at gmail.com. You can send us anything. Tell us that we're doing great. Tell us that we're doing awful. We need to do something different. We're up for changing. We're up for a challenge. Bring it on. I don't give a shit. Or you can come and watch us live every Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern, usually, at twitch.tv/Inside the GM Studio and on YouTube as well. You can always come in, watch us live, talk to us in the chat. We will try to answer any questions that ever come up. Please like, follow, subscribe, do whatever the fuck it is with this shit. Comment. But for this week, for Inside the GM Studio, I've been your host, man.
And I am David number 2.
Nice. A good night. All right. Nice.
Yeah,
You want